Despite the presence of 17,000 United Nations peacekeepers, the resource-rich Democratic Republic of Congo is still racked by unrest and violence. Rebel forces led by Laurent Nkunda have waged war against Congolese government forces, with civilians bearing the brunt of the violence. Journalist and the Rita Ricardo Campbell National Fellow at Stanford University, Mvemba Dizolele, has travelled there extensively, and he's here to give us a closer look. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much, Daja.
So what triggered this latest bout of fighting?
Well, the latest bout of fighting was triggered by the collapse of the peace process. You know, back last year, the militia had met with various groups, the government on one side and various parties involved, particularly Laurent Nkunda and other people involved, the Mai Mai, which is other groups in the region. But they never could come to an understanding of what should be done. Nkunda continued to claim that he's supporting the minority Tutsis in the region. The reality is the minority Tutsis in Congo are not in a serious danger. He used the imagery of what happened in Rwanda, because in the West, if we hear Tutsi, then we think of Hutus.
You mean the genocide in Rwanda?
The genocide in Rwanda in 1994. But the reality on the ground in Congo is totally different. Congo has over 450 ethnic groups. So this balance of the ethnic balance is not the same as we have in Rwanda. The issue really at stake here, I think, is the resources, control of resources. You had mentioned earlier that the country is really wealthy. Whosoever control the resources have tremendous leverage.
In your view, is it primarily an imported conflict from the genocide in Rwanda?
Absolutely. Congo has lived in peace since the 60s, really. Mobutu was in power for 32 years. Mobutu was the president before Laurent Kabila. And it's kind of the end of Mobutu that triggered this fight. In 1994, when the genocide happened in Rwanda, the RPF, which is the troop where the group led by Kagame, was coming from Uganda into Rwanda. With the genocide, the old Rwandan army, with many refugees, about 2 million people relocated in Congo with their weapons and stayed there. So Rwanda under Kagame reserved the right to go into Congo to clear the place of these people, former genocidaires, if you will. But then Rwanda, instead of doing that, went all the way to Kinshasa to topple the government of Mobutu. And since then, the region has been in uproar. Let's
talk about some of the players here. I mean, for instance, the militias. How are they funded in the field? Where do they get their fancy uniforms, the ammunition and the food? Where is the money coming from?
They are self-sufficient in the sense that if you travel to Eastern Congo is replete with strategic minerals. We're talking about coltan. Coltan is the ore that goes into our cell phone, it goes into our laptops, it goes into a lot of our electronics that we use today, video games and others. You talk about gold, you talk about diamond and others, wolframite, cassiterite. The militias, once they control the mines, they control the region where the mines are, then they can sell these resources through Rwanda and through Uganda. With the money that they generate, they then can keep the weaponry, then can use new uniform and equipment. So it's a vicious circle, if you will.
And in terms of the government, what exactly does it control? I mean, is there any kind of Congolese state to speak of?
There is a semblance of a Congolese state. There were elections in 2006. $500 million were invested by the European Union to have this election after 5 years of war. They wanted to end this. So Kabila emerged as the winner after 2 rounds of election. The election in themselves were quite transparent as far as this kind of situations go. So they were far more transparent than anything we've seen in the region. In Rwanda, for instance, Kagame was elected with 95% of the vote, which is kind of hard to believe if you consider the tension between the Hutu and the Tutsis. The government became legitimized in Kinshasa, but the government has not shown the level of leadership or vision to lead the country. The army is still a disparate country where it's a patchwork of various militias that integrated. But the army is not fully functional as a traditional army will be, which means the various units sometimes take orders from the former militia leaders who are now wearing the uniform of the Congolese army, but have not fully given their allegiance to Kinshasa. So with that situation, you have people who have their own agendas or sub-agendas in the end, the government is not fully present where it's supposed to be.
And what role are the United Nations peacekeepers playing? I mean, it's the largest contingent stationed anywhere, something like 17,000. Are they actually helping the situation? Are they hindering it?
I've been embedded with UN troops in Congo in various parts. Without the United Nations, the situation would be worse. But you mentioned 17,000 troops. On the surface, it sounds like a large amount of troops. But Congo is the size of Western Europe. It's the size of 1/3 of the United States, meaning the United States east of the Mississippi. Sierra Leone, which is about 50,000 times less than Congo, had the same amount of troops. So the number of troops in themselves is not enough. Because such a territory, if you have 4,000 UN troops in Kivu, what are they supposed to do? The problem with the UN is not so much the troops themselves, but there's a problem of leadership. The UN Security Council tend to come up with stopgap measures and not really policies that will cover the long run or the long horizon to help with the situation. So if there's a flare-up in Kivu, like we just saw recently, then they appoint a new special envoy, like Obasanjo, the former president of Nigeria, was a special envoy now. Once that kind of dies down, then Obasanjo goes back to Nigeria and everybody forgets it until the next crisis. That is not the way to approach Congo. We need kind of an overarching policy where we sit down with the various groups. In the case of Laurent Nkunda, we know who sponsors Laurent Nkunda. He has a lot of backing from Rwanda and potentially from Uganda as well. What leverage, what pressure are we putting on those countries? Because the solution lies between Kinshasa, meaning President Kabila and his government in Kinshasa, Kagame in Kigali, the president of Rwanda, and Museveni in Uganda. Those three people know each other. They can solve the issue if they wanted to.
Well, what are your thoughts, your assessment on African interventions in the Congo? I mean, what do you think that they've done? Have they helped or have they hindered the situation?
African intervention has been very mixed. Overall, said they've hindered the situation. Because remember, when Mobutu was overthrown after the genocide in Rwanda, he was overthrown by a coalition of troops. You had Ugandans, Burundians, Angolans, and all those people. The collapse of Congo has created kind of a scramble for resources in the region. So the Angolan want their peace, the Rwandan want their peace, the Ugandan want their peace. So overall, Africans have not served Congo very well.
So has that in some way sort of frustrated attempts at peace, at least coming up with a solution that would stick? It seems that it's always so elusive trying to get a ceasefire and satisfying all of the various parties. It holds for a little while and then there's another flare-up.
In a sense, yes. But I think mostly what is lacking here is a political will. I mean, we saw in the case of Sierra Leone, after things got out of control.
But the political will on whose part?
The political will on the part of everybody. In the part of the Congolese government, which takes half steps often, as opposed to overall policies that will put this place, like negotiation, transparent negotiation, where we know exactly what is the position of the Kinshasa government. Most people, most Congolese do not know what the position of the government is in relation to these issues. I don't know if it's a problem of public relations, if it's a problem of the media, if it's a problem of communication, I don't know. But the fact remains that most Congolese don't know what the government really want to do. That's on one level. On the other level, the international community, as we just mentioned, tend to take these stopgap measures when in fact we do know that this doesn't work. $1 billion is the budget of the United Nations in Congo. Should we give that $1 billion to the Congolese government, maybe to help them build the army, if the UN in fact is not doing what it's supposed to do? Because Congo needs an army. We're not engaging the Congolese in rebuilding an army. The South Africans are there, the Angolans are there, but the big powers are absent. The Belgians were involved. But again, it's kind of, there's a lack of coordination. Congo needs an army. Congo needs a law enforcement apparatus that will help that. Short of that, nothing will happen.
Okay, Mvemba Dizolele, thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much, Dajit, for having me.
Karuma wangare, kamochora ke